Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, and many thanks to Anushi, our moderator, and our panelists, Karuna Mangaram, Alison Wiley, Shirin Patit, and Sakshi Jaising, for giving of their time to participate, and to Kanchan Mogri for organising this event. Welcome to today's panel discussion about foundation stage education from DSB International School in Mumbai. This is the first panel discussion in our planned programme, DSB Digital Plus, about the foundation stage, which for children ages 3 to 5 lies in a continuum of learning which starts earlier and stretches on through life. We are privileged this evening to be joined by Karuna Mangaram from the By the Sea nursery, who works with the early years and who will help broaden our understanding of this curriculum. The other panelists work with the foundation stage in their respective schools. Alison Wiley at Oak House in Barcelona and Shirin Patit and Sakshi Jaising at DSB International School in Mumbai. DSB started its journey as an international school over 20 years ago as an English-speaking playgroup attached to the German School of Bombay. And so the foundation stage is indeed the very foundations of our school. As its name suggests, the foundation stage is the fundamental start on which to build lifelong learning, and the provision of foundation stage education is seen as an important marker in the development of a society and the quality of its education system. To quote UNESCO, early childhood, defined as the period from birth to 8 years old, is a time of remarkable growth with brain development at its peak. During this stage, children are highly influenced by the environment and the people that surround them. Early childhood care and education is more than preparation for primary school. It aims at the holistic development of a child's social, emotional, cognitive, and physical needs in order to build a solid and broad foundation for lifelong learning and well-being. Early childhood education has the possibility to nurture caring, capable, and responsible future citizens. In this way, early childhood education is one of the best investments a country can make to promote human resource development, gender equality, and social cohesion, and to reduce the costs for later remedial programs. For disadvantaged children, early childhood education plays an important role in compensating for the disadvantages in the family and combating educational inequalities. What we would like to discuss today is how our choice of the foundation stage curriculum from the United Kingdom ensures a strong start to students' education in preparation for meeting of these lofty goals. It will be good to discuss the features of non-statutory guidance, known as development matters, that support the implementation of practice, and to understand better how this programme really facilitates the provision of best practice in schools. Currently, I am sure it will be of interest to all to understand what this looks like in the context of online learning. I think it is also important to know that this is an excellent programme and is freely available from the UK government website, along with all the non-statutory guidance and resources. If you're looking for somewhere to start or enrich your programme, this is an option you should consider. We hope that you will have questions that you would like to ask our panellists during the proceedings. Please type these into the Q&A section at the bottom of your screens and write to whom you would like them to be directed. We will note them down during the course of the panel discussion and send a representative sample to Anushi, our moderator, to direct to the panelists. Apologies in advance if your question is not chosen, but we hope that the information you are seeking will be covered in a response to the chosen questions. So let me now introduce you to our panelists and to our moderator. Shirin Patit started her career as a teacher with an international school in Mumbai. She pursued her Masters in Educational Leadership and Management from the University of London in 2009, and she has been associated with DSB for over a decade and is currently the head of our primary section, where she handles child development issues with sensitivity and compassion. She believes that the smallest things sometimes take up the most room in our heart. She leads teachers, school principals, and communities to better understand and support educational change. Anushi Mehta, our moderator, was, in a past life, a primary teacher with a keen interest in special needs. Recently, she began her journey into the unique world of children's literature. She uses Kidlit as a medium for navigating current and critical conversations on religion, culture, gendered socialization, neurodiversity, early sexuality, and family structures. She is particularly curious about communities on the margins, and she is also a mother of a child in our kindergarten who was, of course, in foundation stage at DSB school. Sakshi Jai Singh has been teaching and working with children, and it has always been her passion. As a foundation stage teacher at DSB for the past 2 years, she has discovered that it is best to develop children's skills through fun-filled learning, focusing on how children learn rather than what they learn. Having been certified by the University of Oxford Delegacy of Local Examinations, she is currently pursuing a Master's in Education. She has previously taught at G.D. Samani Memorial School and Jimbaru Kids. Karuna Mangaram is the co-founder and director of the By the Sea Pre-Primary School. She first discovered her joy in working with children when she taught gardening to nursery school children at her children's preschool and then at their primary school. From there, she decided to pursue a degree in early childhood education and was fortunate to be able to start her own school. She believes in nurturing individual strengths and providing children with confidence, self-assurance, and a natural curiosity and drive to explore and learn about the world around them, as this creates lifetime self-learners who will always enjoy and seek knowledge. Alison Wiley is a passionate and dedicated early years practitioner with a thirst for knowledge and a quest for excellence, both as a senior leader and as a teacher. She is a firm believer in play-based practice in early years and in outdoor learning. She also believes that the best teachers learn alongside children. Alison has worked in the field of education for 30 years. She started as a TEFL teacher after graduating from University of Modern Languages, and then became very interested in mainstream teaching while doing research for an MA in linguistics and language acquisition. Finally, she moved on to a postgraduate certificate in education. More recently, she has been inspecting nationally for NABSS, the National Association of British Schools in Spain, for whom she is now a lead inspector, and sharing her knowledge and vision as a consultant on the international scale. Last November, she visited DSB to provide training to the foundation stage team, and here built some firm friendships. She says, "I feel privileged to help guide young children along their amazing learning journeys and spark their curiosity. I love my craft." So, without further ado, I would like to turn over the discussion to our panelists and to Anushi. Thank you again for all being involved in this discussion, and thank you very much to all the people who are attending and listening. We hope that you find this evening informative and interesting. Good evening.
Thank you, Dr. Howard, for the lovely introductions and for inviting me to be part of this panel. So as Dr. Howard says, research shows that emotional, social, and physical development in the early years has a great impact on the child's growth. And the first few years are quite critical in forming the brain's architecture. So I'd like to direct my first question to Ms. Karuna Mangaram. Ms. Karuna, what are some of the important skills and development milestones that you focus on at By the Sea? And what does the By the Sea graduate profile look like? And by this, I mean, what are some of the things that you would like to see your children grow and become when they leave By the Sea?
Thanks, Anushi. Thanks, Dr. Howard, for inviting me here on this panel. I'm going to answer this question through a slideshow. Yeah, thank you. So the attributes that are seen here are what we would like our children to inculcate and aspire to have. In honing these characteristics, the children become self-reliant, confident, and independent learners. All these attributes are promoted by facilitating a variety of activities that children themselves choose from and therefore direct their own development. In turn, they acquire skills that make them active, responsible, curious, problem solvers, calm, and many other qualities. All this is done by having broad boundaries within which children can make their own decisions and have the freedom to be themselves. And by the sea, children feel loved and trusted. Now, this trust, love, and freedom instills a positive sense of self where the child feels, I'm okay. At By the Sea, our learning priorities are a little different. Children are not spoon-fed information, but taught to seek knowledge. They're starting to be self-learners and develop a love for learning. Our school readiness program is about developing life skills rather than focusing on an academically driven program. We prioritize emotional, social, physical, and spiritual development, knowing that intellectual development is happening at the same time. At By the Sea, intellectual development is more to do with thought processes and gaining cognitive skills rather than academics. The following slides will help explain how By the Sea focuses on building a positive self-image for the child, keeping in mind that they should not only sail through primary and high school, but also through life. We can take risk-taking as an example. Our teachers encourage children to climb the jungle gym with positive words like, let's go up step by step. I'm right here beside you. You can do it. And they're mindful to not use words like, be careful, it's too dangerous, you will fall down if you will go higher. The school provides activities that are specifically designed to help children develop eye-hand coordination, balance, spatial awareness, sensory perception. The goal being to enable children to strengthen and gain control over their fine and large motor skills. Now, in this slide, you can see there's a lot of language, verbal and non-verbal, to build associations. In a social setup, the child learns to overcome basic struggles like initiating interactions with peers, waiting for their turn, saying bye to mom and dad, and sharing the same material with others. In this slide, you'll see that we have daily 1 hour of free play every day. In which children get to select between 15 to 18 activities, which they get to choose from. By the Sea, teachers don't teach, but children learn. Teachers intentionally set up an environment that can be directed by the child, thus giving the child agency in their own learning. They could paint, make forms through blocks, Play-Doh, or just dress up as their parents or adults going to a party or talking on toy mobile phones. As children play together, they learn self-regulation, patience, negotiations, disappointments, and cooperation. Art and creativity plays a major role in bringing about a holistic development. For example, a simple art activity is easel board painting. It includes fine motor control while holding the brush, the cross-shoulder movement that's a part of large motor control, and by using their imagination and creativity, it gives them an outlet for their emotions. By giving children choices, they feel in control and they can make decisions which builds their self-esteem. It makes them feel responsible little individuals. So we don't touch up our children's work. We work with our parents to appreciate their creativity, whether it makes sense to them or not, because it makes complete sense to the child. So the lines painted in pictures could be just that to us, lines. But to the child, they are aeroplanes or elephants, and we are okay with that. So becoming self-reliant again contributes to the self-esteem of the child. We foster independence by inculcating life skills like helping them learn to wear their shoes, taking care of their belongings, tidying up after play, and encouraging responsibility. So little of life ends up being about how smart you are or how much you know versus how well you communicate. Through pretend play, children develop amazing communication skills. We have quality conversations and discussions along with singing and stories. And most importantly, we listen before responding. Here is a short clip that illustrates that children are so comfortable with each other and understand each other's non-verbal communication. This is pretend play, and we have, when we do air transport, we have something like called airport dramatization. And this is a scene at security clearance. Okay, so that was very slow, but if you could see the movement, all she had to do is wave the hand and the child turned for security clearance. So we encourage exploration, pretend play, and messy play. Messy play is directly linked to trying new things and coping with changes in their environment. Exploring and observing the things around them helps children to gain an awareness of self and the environment, be it related to discussing sustainability through gardening or understanding the behavior of sand when it's dry versus when it's wet. All this basically manifests into a more evolved child. So the children are school ready with the pre-reading, pre-writing, and pre-math skills. This is accomplished by doing a lot of repetitive fine motor control activities that help the muscle strength in the fingers, palms, wrists, and arms. Pre-math activities include learning foundational concepts such as big and small, few and many, as long as, and so on. Studies show that the exposure and experiences that children have in their early years set the foundation for their learning, and that every experience after that is built on those foundational experiences. Hence, providing an environment that is conducive to ensuring holistic development is our priority. So I'd like to conclude this by saying that a typical by the sea graduate is exposed to a synthesis of age-appropriate and stage-appropriate activities that create and nurture autonomous and lifelong learning, preparing them for the next step. So I hope I was able to answer the question through a slideshow, Anushi.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Karuna. You have a beautiful school and one that I've had the privilege of sending my daughter already, and hope that once the lockdown ends, my son will be able to attend. And it's very obvious to see that By the Sea puts in a lot of thought behind every single activity. And I love that you said that children learn when teachers don't teach. I think that's such an important point. So thank you, Ms. Karuna, and I'll be coming back to you towards the end of the session. For the majority of this discussion, we will focus on the Early Years Foundation Stage program, also known as the EYFS program. So I'd like to direct my first question about the EYFS program to Ms. Allison. Ms. Allison, can you please give us a broad overview of the Early Years Foundation Stage program? And what are some of the themes that underpin the program?
Certainly. Thank you very much. And thank you, Karuna, because your presentation has wonderfully illustrated a lot of the things I'm going to mention now, which probably would have been a lot drier without those lovely photographs that people can bear in mind as I'm speaking. So the Early Years Foundation Stage Framework sets the standards for learning and development from birth to 5 years old in England. And as the name suggests, and as several of my colleagues have already mentioned, I love the name of the curriculum because it is the foundation of future learning. And we all know how important foundations are. And Development Matters, which we're going to go into a little bit more today, is, as Dr. Howard mentioned, a non-statutory document which gives the guidelines for how to how to achieve those standards, if you like. There are 7 areas of learning in the foundation stage curriculum, which my colleague Shireen will be talking about later, so I won't go into detail about those. And there are also 4 underlying principles or themes, as Anushi just mentioned, and those are essential to the scheme. The first one is the unique child. Of course, every child is unique, we all know that. But more importantly, the foundation stage curriculum sees every child as capable. And I think that's really key, because we have to have high expectations, even of very small children. Very small children are very capable of lots of things. And positive relationships. That includes the relationships that a child has with an adult, whether that's their family or their teachers, or any other adult that they come into contact with, but also, of course, their peers. And that's crucial for their social development. And also enabling environments. We saw lots of wonderful examples in Karina's presentation of an enabling environment. So the enabling environment is all about what the setting is like, where the children learn and play, and what the resources are for them to use. I think it's important there to say that, of course, we mustn't forget the human resource, which is the adult. And I would agree that the teacher isn't always teaching, and I'll mention that a little bit later on. Another very important thing about the early years curriculum is that ongoing formative assessment is really at the heart of it. We should always start with the child and observe the children at play and at work, to be able to then move on to analysing what we've seen and working out what the next steps are, where they need to go next. As we said, children are unique, so every child might be at a different place along their development journey, and we will be giving them exactly what they need as an individual, as a unique child. And that might be providing something in the environment, or it might be with an interaction, etc., as we saw in those lovely photographs. So all those 3 themes or principles put together give us the learning and development, which is the 4th principle. And I think it's important also to say that all these experiences should not only be challenging, but also playful. Play is key at this age. Also, as part of the early years foundation stage curriculum, it's important to mention the characteristics of effective learning. They are basically how children at an early years age, young children, learn best, because of course it's very different from a child in primary or in secondary. And early years is all about how children learn through play, as I said, by playing and exploring. Karina mentioned this in her presentation too. So children should be able to experiment and explore and find out about things that they're interested in. They should be active. So children at this age shouldn't be sitting down on chairs all day long. They should be able to move around. They should be active and learn through doing things. And that obviously increases their motivation. And the other key characteristic of effective learning is creating and thinking critically. So children should be able to have their own ideas. And they have lots of ideas, and they have lots of wonderful ideas, which we can use as teachers or as practitioners and as their guides. So by way of an analogy, I like analogies, if you have the framework, you have the development matters, which is the guidelines, you have the 7 areas of learning, which Shireen will be talking about later, you have the underlying principles, you have the formative assessment, the observation, and you have the characteristics of effective learning. So there are ingredients, we mix them all up together. As we know, some of us are really good at cooking and others aren't. And the key thing with cooking is the chef. The chef's very important. So what we need to do in the early years is aim to be master chefs. And that's the end of my answer for that question.
Thank you so much, Alison, for your wonderful response. So if I can just summarize, the 4 underlying principles of a successful early years program would be a unique child and having the confidence that every child is capable, having positive relationships with caretakers, teachers, and everyone within the environment, in the child's environment, having an enabling environment, and focusing on learning and development through formative assessments. Is that correct? Okay. So I'd like to target my next question to Ms. Shireen. Ms. Shireen, what is so distinctive about the Early Years Foundation Stage program, and could you shed some light on the 7 areas of learning?
Thank you, Anushi. Thank you to everyone who's already spoken before me. I feel like I'm being set up for success, building on the answers that people have already given. I think that the Early Years Foundation Stage program is very robust because of the way everything connects together. The 4 themes create the environment, the characteristics of effective learning, I feel, and I remember somebody telling me this a long time ago, this is what even a teenager should be exhibiting, and we do use the same ideas phrased differently. You should be able to have a go and see what happens in all of our learning. You should be able to develop your critical thinking skills, and you should be, actively engaging. All of these characteristics of effective learning are the foundations in the foundation stage, foundations for a really successful individual. What we want to do are to give these all the children the tools for success throughout their lives. And the thing that I like best about the Early Years Foundation Stage is how all of that integrates. When it comes to how the teaching and learning and development is described, then you have the 7 areas of learning. So there's the 3 prime areas of learning, which are almost extensions of the characteristics of effective learning. These are, again, the further foundations. So we have the personal, social, and emotional development. You have communication and language, and you have your physical development. So these are the cores through which all of the other things that you might be bringing into their learning rely on these being successful elements. So once you have a focus on these lifelong skills, you can then start developing what we in the foundation stage call the specific areas of learning. So you have your literacy, you have your mathematics, and you have understanding the world and your expressive art and design. So, but it all interconnects and they all link together in a way that is holistic development, but I think really sets the children for successful careers as learners after they finish foundation stage. They do have another 12, 13 years of school ahead of them. So I think that this gives them the cognitive foundation for a really successful education career.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shireen, for such a wholesome description of the 7 areas of learning. If I can just quickly summarize. So you said that the primary 3 areas of learning would be the personal, social, and emotional, and then physical and communication and language. Is that?
That's
and those are the 3 foundation blocks. And if we focus on those, then literacy, math, understanding the world, and expressive design kind of come into play.
They link. You can't have development and skill and success in those specific areas if you haven't got a good foundation in the prime areas.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ms. Shireen. So again, I'd like to go back to Ms. Alison Wiley. So could you tell us how the EYFS program is comparable to other programs for children of the same age? And is there something in particular that draws you to this program specifically?
Yes, thank you. I think the beauty of this curriculum is for me that it's child-centred, that it's developmentally appropriate, which is something that Karuna spoke about as well. That play is fundamental to it, and that it was influenced by some really great philosophies and theorists and approaches. More, over the last 2 centuries, more or less, very progressive and child-centred views of the curricula have been influential in early childhood education, from Froebel and Montessori in Europe to Dewey in the States, and seeing play as a key element, and the role of the adult as more of a facilitator or a guide. Obviously, we're teachers, but the role of teaching is very different in the early years foundation stage to primary, for example. To offer some comparisons, I'm going to talk very briefly about a couple of programs that I'm very interested in, but also I think that have very many similarities with the early years foundation stage. One is the Tiwariki curriculum from New Zealand, which envisages the curriculum as like a web or a woven mat. So rather like Shireen was talking about the early years foundation stage with everything being interwoven, that's exactly what their curriculum is called. And in fact, Development Matters, the non-statutory guidance that we have in the early years foundation stage, on every page, you'll find that it says that the chronological steps don't have to be taken as steps like that as a checklist or necessarily in that order, because everything is interwoven, as Shireen was saying, and as the Tiwariki curriculum says. So a child can be in one place, then go to another, etc. in terms of their development. It's not linear. And also in the early years foundation stage, they recognised in New Zealand the value of having a separate curriculum for the early years. And I think that's important because, as I just said, it is very different. So it's important to have a different curriculum, which obviously feeds into the national curriculum, but it's a different curriculum. And that's the same in New Zealand. Unlike the early years foundation stage and the Tiwariki curriculum, another approach from Italy, the Reggio Emilia approach, is not a compromise at all between the demands of the national curriculum and an early years curriculum. It's completely learner-centred, and they don't really have a curriculum framework, if you like. It's a curriculum that grows from the experience that the professionals are having with the children alongside them. This is something that I think we can introduce in our own practice. And in that sense, I think the early years foundation stage allows us to do that. It gives us the freedom to do that because it's not too prescriptive. So we can be inventive with the children and with our curriculums. And I think another similarity that Reggio Emilia has with the early years foundation stage is that they see the child as being very capable. And again, I think that's going back to what I said before. Young children are very capable, and we need to have high expectations of them. In fact, I believe that the early years foundation stage is often misconstrued, and practitioners sometimes feel that it has to be more regimented. And it was very refreshing to see how Karuna does things at her preschool. And also when I visited, I was so fortunate to visit the school in Mumbai, your school in Mumbai, because you also do things in a very child-centred way, and that's so important. Of course, the curriculum, the earliest foundation stage curriculum, gives us the guidelines and the orientations, but we are free to develop that in our own way, and each school needs to do that to build their own curriculum, if you like, or the way they do things. So I really encourage anyone who's listening to be inventive, to be brave and be innovative, because there are lots of different ways of doing things. And as I said before, going back to that analogy, many different styles of cooking. And that's my answer.
Thank you so much, Miss Allison. So I think from hearing Miss Karuna, Miss Shireen, and you speak, I think I can safely say that all of you believe that education should be completely child-centric, and all of you believe that learning should be interwoven and not linear. And I've not heard of the Tiviriki curriculum in New Zealand, but I'd love to find out more. I have heard of the Reggio Emilia curriculum, and it's lovely. I'd like to direct my next question to Ms. Shireen. Could you let us know how the EYFS program prepares children for a more formal education?
I think it does, in the separation of the prime areas of learning from the specific areas of learning. I think that by taking the time to actually introduce the more formal idea of literacy and math, that they do have a foundation that readies them for what the expectations are when they move into primary school. But that said, if there are, for example, if you are in England and you are following the EYFS and you're moving into primary, there is a transition stage. There is no immediate walk into a very formal, and it is a transition stage of 6 to 18 months, depending on the school. So there is that understanding that the unique child and how they are maybe moving at different paces, and their preference for sitting in a primary classroom and learning in that way will come to them at different stages. So you don't change the way you're teaching them because you want to. You need to change the way you're teaching them because it is a more effective way of teaching them that they are more receptive to. So normally you would have a transition period when you move out of the foundation stage, but I think they're given the attention to those more academic fundamentals in a way that is creative and child-led, that prepares them well for that transition.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shireen. I'd like to focus my next set of questions on the real-life implementation of the EYFS program. So again, I'd like to ask Ms. Allison a question. How is the EYFS program implemented in international schools?
I think that it depends very much on the shared vision that the school has on how best to achieve the standards and the goals that are set out in the early years curriculum, which, as I said, does allow for freedom in how you do that. For example, in Spain, obviously, as an inspector, I've seen several schools and a wide variety of different ways of implementing the curriculum amongst the British schools here. It's also important to say that it depends on, I think, the type of school, you know, whether it's a small primary school, whether it's a through school, and obviously on the curriculum of the mapping of in the rest of the school. So, you know, for example, whether it's an IB school that does PYP and MYP, or whether they follow the national curriculum from Great Britain. So it does depend on the kind of school, I think, how it's implemented. But more than anything, I think it's the vision. At Oak House, for example, where I work, under normal circumstances, because of course with COVID-19, you know, everything is very different at the moment. normally we operate a free flow system, so the children can move around freely between their classes, what we have we call shared areas, and the outdoors, so they can move in and out freely when they want to, for most of the time. And they access the resources and activities that we have for them, I think probably in a very similar way to how Karina works at her school, with things on offer in all 7 areas of the curriculum. We do something that is called in the moment planning. So we don't work from topics, and we start with the children's interests, and sometimes in a rather similar way to the way they do things in the Reggio Emilia approach, sometimes those children's interests inevitably become a mini project, if you like. But rather than starting with what the adults have decided that children will learn about, it comes from them. And obviously, as I said before, the role of the adult is really, really crucial in making that wonderful cake, if you like. So adults should be modelling language. They should be showing and explaining how to do things, setting challenges, providing the resources, obviously observing and guiding, etc. And that's how the adults in our setting work. Obviously, especially in the reception year, there are times when it's more teacher directed. For example, we have short sessions for phonics and for maths input. As Stream was saying, you know, once you've really laid the foundation with those the prime areas of learning, then you move on to the maths and the literacy. So we do have those short sessions too, where the children are sitting and the teacher's teaching, basically. We also take inspiration from forest schools from Denmark. We have a couple of forest school leaders, and we don't have forests here like they do in Denmark, but there is a small woodland quite close by, so the children, you know, can access that. And as I said before at the beginning, I think I'm a real advocate for outdoor learning, and it's great for children, for their mindfulness, for their personal social development, for learning about the world and how to look after it. It's wonderful for that to happen. So we also do forest school here a little bit, and we also use an approach for literacy called the helicopter story approach, where children are invited to tell their stories, and the adults scribe them, and then they act it out later, and that's wonderful for their oracy skills and consequently their writing. So I haven't talked a lot about how things are done internationally. I know I've talked about how we do things here, and in Spain you see a variety of things, but I think the important thing, my main message is that this curriculum can be done in lots of different ways, and that's why I think it's really important and interesting to share different experiences from different places around the world.
Thank you so much. So even though it's the EYFS program has been created in Britain, and students who are studying in Britain would probably naturally progress to the national curriculum, it's not necessary. If you're a teacher or a school outside Britain, it's quite easy to implement the EYFS program as long as you're inventive, and you can follow it up with a full IB program through their formal education or the Cambridge program.
Yeah, I think it marries. Sorry, I think it marries really well with the IB program, but also with the national curriculum. If you have supportive colleagues in the rest of the school.
Yeah. Okay, lovely. And sorry, again, Alison, I'm going to ask you one more question, and then I'll move on to Ms. Sakshi. I know the Early Years Foundation Stage program puts a lot of emphasis on the socio-emotional development of the child. Could you talk a little bit about that, and any anecdotes that you could share, or any personal experiences that you've had with the child that kind of show how important this aspect of development is?
Yes, obviously, as Shireen said before, it's one of the, well, in fact, I think it's probably the most important area of learning, because without if a child doesn't feel happy and safe and secure, they're not going to learn anything really. The area of personal, social, emotional development has different aspects. So they're basically making relationships, which ties in with the underlying principle as well. Making relationships, self-confidence, obviously very important. That's why, as we saw in Karina's lovely presentation, it's so important for those children to be climbing on that climbing frame, and for adults not to be telling them, oh, be careful. Taking risks, building up their self-confidence, managing their feelings. We all know it's very difficult for young children to manage their feelings. It's difficult for adults to manage their feelings, but even more difficult for young children. So I have many anecdotes about that. But just before I go on to an anecdote, I think it's important to say that personal, social, and emotional development kind of permeates the whole day. I'm sure Sakshi would agree with that. You're forever stopping things to help support a child because they're missing their mummy, or because they're fighting over a toy maybe, or because a child is lashing out. So you're supporting them with their personal, social, emotional development all the time, all day long. And I feel like I've been speaking an awful lot. So to end on an anecdote, on a quite a funny one, I think. I do assemblies with reception children, which are focused on personal, social, emotional development, really. It must have been Christmas time, and I was reading a story about a hedgehog who receives a woolly hat as a Christmas present, but obviously as he's got lots of spikes, it's not a great present for him. So he gifts it on, and in the story, all the animals keep gifting on the hat because it's not quite the right present for them. And the message really about the story is how important giving is. And I really thought that the children were getting this idea that giving is so important, and that Christmas is more about giving than anything else, and giving and love, and how lovely it is at the end of the story when the little hedgehog uses this hat as a little bed. So it's actually the perfect present for him in the end. So I say rather foolishly, so children, what do you think this story is about? What do you think the most important thing is about Christmas? And lots of hands go up. But I see a little boy who's really quite well developed in terms of social and emotional intelligence, if you like. So I think, right, I'm going to ask him to answer the question. So I say, yeah, so what do you think Christmas is all about then? What do you think this story is telling us? And he says, presents. Presents the most important thing. So yeah, we have a tough job as early years educators, but it's so important to help them understand these things. The most important thing.
Thank you so much, Miss Allison. I'm hearing you talk. I could listen to your stories for a while. Ms. Sakshi, before I ask you this question, I would actually like to ask you, as a DSB teacher, how do you and your teachers run the EYFS program within the school?
Thank you, Anushi. And Alison has already said what I wanted to say. She's spoken a lot, but I'll just reiterate again. In foundation stage, play is essential for children's development and learning. They spend the majority of their time playing and pursuing their own interests, and this takes place through a balance of play-based, child-initiated, and adult-led activities. So children have access to any resources they wish to use. They can play indoors or outdoors, and their games can take any direction they like. And this is how they actually learn. So when children show a high level of involvement in whatever they're doing, their brains, it's actually the most active at that time. And this is when progress occurs. So we spend our time observing children, playing with them and joining in with their games, assessing what they do, and whether, if there is any cause for concern or need for any support, extra support, and planning interactions with them, which will move their learning on. So following the child's interest is the basis of our curriculum planning. And many a times, like Alison said, we do in-the-moment planning. So the idea is to capture the interest of a child in the present moment. And so we capitalize on their moments of curiosity and enthusiasm by encouraging them, extending their interest by asking open-ended questions, and then document the observation, which includes their curiosity, the teachable moment, and what we did next. So this helps us to map out each child's interests and plan an environment that works for them. So each child is assigned in FS a key worker for the entire year, and we help them feel comfortable and secure in all environments. We have regular meetings with parents to monitor their development and maintain open and regular communication with them. We identify each child's likes, dislikes, their skills and qualities, and support them to seek challenges, they take risks, and to reflect and try again if things go wrong. So we also support the ways in which children engage with other people and their environment through playing, exploring, actively learning, creating, and thinking critically. And this underpins learning and development across all areas and support the child to remain a motivated learner. So I think the perception that, all children and teachers do in early years is just play, I think it's quite true. And that is why our children are so happy, confident, and making excellent progress. I hope I answered your question, Anushi.
Yeah, actually, you kind of stole what I was going to say. I think it looks, it looks so easy on the surface, right? Like you're just going with the flow, following what the child wants. But I think it requires so much more from, emotionally, physically, to kind of curate your curriculum according to each child's individual interest.
Right.
That firsthand. So it's really beautiful. And Ms. Sakshi, can you tell me how you incorporate socio-emotional well-being? Because I also know that's a very important part of DSB and, something that DSB values a lot.
Yes.
If you'd like to share an anecdote, we'd love to hear that.
Sure. So personal, social, and emotional development is one of the prime areas of learning, like what Shirin said. And it is one of the building blocks for children's emotional well-being. We involve children in everything. If we need to make class rules, plan a marble party, decide on our next topic, change our display boards, or even make any model, we collaborate together. So this makes them confident, capable, resilient, and self-assured. Social and emotional development can enable children to develop their resilience, and it covers making relationships, their self-confidence, self-awareness, and managing their own feelings and behavior. So we support children in linking openly others and provide opportunities to know everyone in the group, not just their special friends, but everyone around. So even with their own key person, individually and in small groups, we provide activities. We encourage children to explore and talk with whatever they're learning, valuing their ideas and even ways of doing things. And we even offer help only when asked, not otherwise. So they're just by themselves. So when they really need something, so we're always there to help. So that's what brings them confidence. And recognizing and enjoying their success, it really is something else. It makes them feel so happy and so confident. So we discuss about our feelings every day. We talk about what is fair, what is unfair situations. We praise positive behavior, and we address and resolve any injustices done in class through role plays or puppet shows. That's something they just love. So like I mentioned earlier, the key person works alongside parents to ensure that there is continuity of care for the child, thus supporting the child's emotional well-being. So I read this story to my children last year. It's called Have You Filled My Bucket? Have You Filled a Bucket? It's all about filling each other's buckets with kind words. And this story impacted the child so much that for many days, every time during circle time, he would come and discuss how he filled his mother's bucket. He said, I didn't fill anybody else's bucket, I only filled my mother's bucket. And every day he would come and say that. So hearing him, other children too decided to fill somebody's buckets. And during circle time, they gathered the confidence and they started sharing their part. So it was so good that children are learning from each other and they're becoming so confident. And now since everything has gone online, we have this one-on-one well-being chat with each child just to check on them, on how they're coping and how they're feeling. And most of them said that we really miss school because we want to play. So I asked them, like, what do you really miss playing? And they said they miss playing with their friends in the mud kitchen. So we have a beautiful mud kitchen that the kids have made. Like every morning, they would be just playing in the mud kitchen and getting dirty. And that was their play. And then they said we miss playing, we miss the climbing frame and we miss Rudolph. So Rudolph is a space rocket that, we all built together with cardboard boxes using many resources. So everyone had their personal touch making it. So, it's so good when, they miss all these things and they're waiting to come back to school. But, I understand one thing, that the most important thing for teachers at school and parents at home is maintaining our own self of well-being. So when we are happy, the children are happy. So, yeah, that is what I wanted to say.
Miss Action. It's so, obvious to see how passionate you are about working with these young children. And I can't resist the temptation to ask you how COVID-19 has affected, the conduct of the EYFS program, especially since there's so much emphasis on personalized learning. How are you managing with, having to interact with your children and having a new batch that you're engaging with for the first time online?
Right. So honestly, at the moment, I have made my living room my classroom. I've got all the resources from school. I mean, we thought maybe we would go back to school, but now seeing the situation, so I went to school, I picked up everything, and I've made my full living room my classroom. So now, trying to make fun learning. So, but of course, initially there were challenges, and I'm sure everyone was facing it, changing from an offline school to an online school overnight, trying to find resources online and doing our best to make the progress smooth. It did take, some time and energy, but at school, we have been lucky to have access to Read and Write Inc., which is our phonics program, and resources from Twinkle. So we learned to optimize our teaching time according to the availability of the resources. Our children are so small and we can't leave everything to them. So we need somebody who will be working as a team with us, and normally it's the parent at home. So through this pandemic, we learned how to work better with parents as well, how to involve them in every way possible, and how to support them. So who in turn would support their children in online learning and being a part of this education process. So there are many challenges in online learning, but it is how you look at it. You can approach it as a problem, or you can approach it as something that will contribute to your own development. So I think we at DSB approach it as opportunities for growth, and this is, and this way it will make us better educators, from an offline school to online school. So we are also coming in many stages. We're learning so many things. And we have a fabulous teachers, we have a fabulous team of teachers, and we all work as a team. We plan together, we face challenges together, and we have all expanded our team in this pandemic by involving parents on another level. So now they have become one of the building stones in their children's education. So we learned how to include everyone in the process and build a strong partnership with them. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I was quite worried about, having my daughter at home for a bulk of the day, but I'm really enjoying, learning with her and seeing how she is growing as well every day. So thank you, Ms. Sakshi, Ms. Allison, and Ms. Shireen for shedding light on the EYFS program. It sounds lovely. And I'd like to wrap up with just a couple of questions to Ms. Karuna. So Ms. Karuna, as a director of By the Sea, which is a preschool, what sort of questions or guidance do parents seek from you about the next step in their child's education?
The most common question that is addressed to us is basically that you know our child so well by now. Do you think XYZ school is the right fit for my child? Will my child fit in beautifully in that school? Or what type of a program do you think would suit my child? So that's when it comes to admissions to big school. So, so because we know the children so well, so we normally guide them and tell them that, look, first get into the schools and you have a choice of schools in your hand, then you decide, because in Bombay it's not so easy to get into the school of your first choice. So but all our parents know that the child here, the By the Sea child, is very adaptable. So a very structured environment also is, the child adapts beautifully to in a structured environment also. And in a school like yours, which seems like an extension of By the Sea over there.
Thank you so much, Ms. Karuna. And I have one last question for you. Is there something that you would like to see formal or bigger schools do to help work better with a preschool? Is there any way that a school can, anything that a school can do to collaborate with a preschool?
Okay, that's a dream question. Yes, so the basic, right. I mean, it would have been great. It would be great, like how we came to school and came to DSB, and Ms. Shirin so kindly gave us a lovely tour of the school. And so she also had said that, independence is something which we really, see that in By the Sea children, and we're very happy with that. So we would love to work with schools and know that, okay, what are the parameters you're looking for? What kind of readiness levels are you looking for? Are you looking for children with a completely blank slate in academics? Are you looking for someone who was able to complete his task and, not move around or whatever? So I would love to have some sort of a collaboration with parents, with schools, where they can come and give us a feedback on, or even basically let us know what sort of readiness levels they would like in terms of academics also, because as long as it fits in with our philosophy and our methodology, we do some alphabets, but we do phonics. We don't know whether the children are going to go to big school and they're going to unlearn what has been learned over here. So that is a concern, and it is a thought all the time in a teacher's mind.
Yeah, no, and I think whatever we can do to make the transition for the child easier, we should try and do that. And I think that kind of brings us towards the end of the webinar. What I'd like to do now is take a few of the questions that parents and educators have put across. And then maybe we can wrap up with a few final thoughts from all of you. So someone had asked if a recording of the session would be available, and I'd like to say that it is going to be uploaded on the DSB Facebook page, and it's also going to be available on YouTube. The links will be sent out next week, so you can look out for those. I have two questions that have been asked, and if anyone feels that they'd like to answer it, then maybe you can just go ahead and answer. How can a parent support foundation education? So I think, how can a parent work with a child at home in the early years? Is there anyone that would like to answer that? Can I start with Alison, maybe? Maybe she can share something on what parents can do?
Yeah, I don't want to hog the conversation, but well, I mean, the obvious thing that comes to my mind is by being parents, because obviously parents are children's first educators, and they start with their parents, and they're with their parents before they come to preschool or school. And I'm sure that the vast majority of parents are doing exactly what they should be doing. Sometimes, obviously, parents need guidance, and then they ask the teacher or the school for that. And there are lots of different ways that parents can help their children, but I think obviously playing with them, listening to them, reading stories, and teaching them the basic human values. I'm absolutely sure that the vast majority of parents are doing exactly what they should be doing, but I'm also sure that most schools are very happy to share guidance and give support when they need it.
And I thought I'd also ask Ms. Shireen if she could, shed a bit of more light on this. How can parents support children in the foundation years?
Yeah, thanks. I think what Alison said is absolutely correct. Is the best support. I think meeting them where they are. When I see parents who are anxious about their child's progress in the foundation stage, it's mostly because the parent doesn't understand what appropriate progress looks like for a child of that age. My child is 4 and not reading War and Peace yet. So having that time to engage with the child where the child is, and not have some sense of there's an external expectation that my child be somewhere and we're missing the mark. It puts a lot of strain on what Alison rightly said is a beautiful, healthy relationship. So spending the time, reading stories, talking, engaging with them, having conversations. That oracy is incredibly powerful. Reading them stories, talking about the stories, going for walks, talking about the things you see, talking to them in the car, continuously engaging in that kind of inclusion of their experience into your experience is really, really great.
Anushi can't hear you. You need to unmute.
I knew that would happen at one point during the conversation.
Can I say one thing? So we've been telling parents, please make your child independent, especially during the COVID times. Spend time with them, play with them. Parents have all the resources. They have more than what we have. So play with them, give them tasks, and they love doing things and they think it's a game. Get them to cook something, they will be on top of the world. Let them make a sandwich, and this is the best time to get them independent, because generally when they're rushing to school, it's the parents who are tying the laces, getting them ready. But now with this whole COVID thing, they have all the time. They need to get independent. Parents should just tell them, okay, you can do it by yourself. So parents should encourage them to be independent.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sakshi.
Thank you.
Ms. Karuna, I have a question for you. What would you do for children who are very nervous about exploring and trying new things? How could a parent support their child to become more of a risk taker, I guess?
Okay, so at home scenario, are we talking about a home scenario?
I think it would be in a home scenario.
The best form is support their play, okay? Because so at home, it's probably what you can do is do things, activities, like if you're talking in terms of activities, do a lot of messy play, give opportunities to, cook. So as Alison pointed out, it's the most wonderful thing to do. They learn a whole lot of things. They are taking risks. They're dirtying their hands. They're messing up. So messy play is known to help, create risk takers. So they are seeing the product at the end of what they've done together with the adult. So basically creating risk takers is by stepping back. I just feel parents need to step back a little bit, and the child will go ahead and take the risk.
Thank you.
So as long as it's a secured risk, as in when we talk about the safety, if the safety is not compromised, the child needs to be left alone.
Thank you so much, Ms. Karuna. I'd just like to ask Dr. Howard, there are a few more questions have come in through the Q&A. Do we have time to take a few more questions?
I am typing them for you as fast as possible. So you've now got about another 3 or 4. So I imagine probably another 3 or 4 would be good, yeah.
Okay, great. So I have the questions here. So I can start. So a teacher is asking how she can ensure that activities are done. So I'm guessing this is specific to COVID-19 and when a lot of the learning is happening online. She said, how can I ensure that activities are done by children and not hovered or done by parents just to finish and make their child look the best? Ms. Shireen, would you like to answer this?
Yeah, absolutely happy to answer it. I think it's something that we've all experienced. I think what we're trying to do at DSB is to make the learning happening in real time. So there isn't really the opportunity for the parent to take the paper away, get all the printouts and cut it up. There is that temptation on the part of parents to make their child look as good as they can, which is a natural temptation, but our job is to find out where they are. So it is I think it's a legitimate concern. So I think what we're trying to do is have all of that happen in front of the child so that their interaction is with their peers and with their teacher. And I think it's a process. I think if any of our parents are listening, it's a process of negotiation with each parent individually, inviting them to take a few steps further away from the laptop every lesson. So actually, you might want to add something to that.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah, and I was actually had another question that I was going to direct towards Sakshi, Ms. Sakshi.
Sure.
So again, this is related to COVID. So again, the element of child-centric concept that you just talk about, can you share a couple of tips for teachers to continue this child-centered education, which I guess you touched upon earlier, but can you maybe give a few things that you do, with online learning to make sure that learning is child-centric?
So, sure. So since we have our key worker groups, we work in small groups. and we have a lot of circle time where we discuss, we talk about what they like, their interests. So when a child tells us, our conversation goes from one place to another place. So if you're talking about something, we land up somewhere else. So whatever the child wants to know, our whole planning changes. We're just learning about that. We're only talking about that. So we don't break the flow. So it's everything what they want to talk about. So like we were talking about helicopters, the children. Then one of them said, "Oh, I went to America and I ate this, I ate that," and the stories went all over the place. So whatever in our small little group, the children are getting so confident to talk about their interests. So we're just banging on that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sakshi. So again, someone has asked that someone is saying that they find it a bit difficult to balance academics and play-based learning for 5-year-olds. Ms. Allison, would you like to kind of tell us how to balance, because I guess at this age, children are sort of also learning a lot of skills like numeracy, literacy. So how do you balance that play and formal learning?
Yeah, I mean that's it's very tricky, and it takes, as I said before, master chefs or skilled practitioners to accomplish it. Really, I think you can even in reception work a lot through play with the children, and have plenty of opportunities for the children to access in their free active play resources that will promote those literacy and numeracy skills. So basically everything that you do inside, you can do outside. And you can have letters outside, you can have numbers outside, etc., etc. You can incorporate numeracy skills into an activity that has also come from the children. For example, I'm thinking of a group of reception children that I saw last year playing. One of the little boys was on a skateboard on his back, and he was under some blocks fixing the bike, basically. So he was pretending to be a mechanic. And that's where I think a skilled practitioner would step in and provide some rulers or some paper and pens to write out the bill, to make the bill, because obviously they have to pay for that. They have to pay that mechanic. So you can introduce numeracy and literacy in play. But of course, you also still have to do some teacher-led sessions, especially in reception. So that's where, as in the DSB, you have your read-writing sessions for phonics, which are really crucial. And you would encourage children who need it, particularly all children, but the ones who are further behind with things, through the play to be exploring their literacy skills and their numeracy skills more. So when I say we're guides, like I mean you do have to guide the children. They can't just play with the ball all day long. Sometimes you have to guide them towards the areas of learning that they need to develop, and I think that's where teachers have to become a bit more upfront with their teaching, rather than just letting the children explore for themselves.
And I think training is really important here as well, having the right kind of training to be able to make learning as organic and find opportunities to teach children even when they're just playing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry, and as Sakshi said before, it's about spotting that teachable moment as well when they are playing.
Thank you so much, Ms. Allison. I have a question for Ms. Karuna. How is difficult behavior handled in the early years?
So depends what do you term difficult behavior. For an early years practitioner, there's no difficult behavior. Okay. So give me an example. What is difficult? Is it a tantrum? Is it bullying? Is it biting? For any of these, we look at the source of the problem. So a lot of the times children come to us with speech delays. Okay, that's so common now. It wasn't there earlier. And one of the reasons being, I mean, there are many reasons to speech delays. So the consequences of speech delays is all frustration. I cannot communicate with my peers in the language that I communicate at home. My parents understand me, everyone else understands me at home, but the children don't seem to understand me here at all. So I get frustrated. It manifests earlier in just difficult behavior that, it can happen physical, I can start biting or start pulling hair. So we need to see the source of the problem. Okay, so if it's a tantrum, again, everything it goes back. Parents don't like to hear this, so I'm not going to say that anymore. We go back home, ask the parents, let's sit down and chat about this. Because, in this environment, honestly, we don't see too much difficult behavior because there's so much freedom. We have broad boundaries. Our boundaries are not narrow. They're very broad boundaries. The children they're trusted. They're treated as individuals and they have freedom. So when they have these, there's no reason to have any difficult behavior. So conflicts happen, we resolve them, we teach them how to resolve conflicts.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I think, as you said, I think for an early years practitioner, there's nothing like bad behavior. I think that's what any early years practitioner would probably feel. So I have a question that I'm going to direct towards Ms. Shireen. As children can come from a variety of preschools with different philosophies, Montessori, Playway, Reggio Emilio, is there a particular philosophy that can be followed that helps make an easy transition into the EYFS program when they move to formal school? Or can the child adapt from any philosophy?
Moving out of EYFS into formal school?
I think
from
preschool, there are many different preschool programs, and then when they move into a school which follows the EYFS program, is it easy for children to adapt when they've been following a different program?
Yes, it is. There are some children who do come from schools that are more rules-based, and they are a little more shy because freedom is a challenge for them in the beginning. But no, I think that the opportunities for them to follow their own interests, I mean, that's the whole point, is curiosity should be the guide. It should be the spark. It should be the exciting thing for them. So it doesn't take them very long to be drawn to be able to take advantage of that opportunity. So I think children at 3, when they join us, whatever background they've come from, they're very, very flexible, and they adopt the new norms, and they make friends, and they have a great time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shireen. I think there's a question. I'm not sure if I understand it completely, so I'm sorry if I'm not asking the question correctly, but I'm going to direct this one to Ms. Sakshi. How do you do formative assessments or ongoing assessments?
Okay.
I guess with Corona, with COVID, and even regularly.
So we have 2 kinds of assessments, one formative. So in that, and summative. So in formative, we are watching the children play, and we join them play, we see what they're doing, and we make our notes. And then we plan our learning forward. And the other one is we use, we have even a learning journal that we make for them. At the end of the year, we give it to them. So we click photographs, we make our notes, we see how the child has progressed when, from day one till the end of the year. So we have the full report in that learning journal. And we also use something called Classroom Monitor, where we type in all our assessments and we put the child in which levels they are. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sakshi. And I think we're going to wrap it up here.
Okay, so can I just say thank you very much, Anushi, for managing this panel discussion so wonderfully and helping to draw the themes back together. Thank you very much, Alison, for your perspectives and the sort of broader picture that you brought from your global experience of Foundation Stage. Thank you so much, Karuna, for joining us and sort of really helping us understand early years. Thank you, of course, to Shirin and Sakshi, not only for your participation this evening, but for making it such a successful program at DSB and for having made it so successful whilst we've been online. I really, really enjoyed listening to everybody. I know, judging from the questions that have come in and from the comments that have been made, that a lot of people have thoroughly enjoyed it. And certainly if there are other questions for the panelists, by all means write to me and I will pass them on. And likewise, of course, we will be streaming this, we'll be putting this onto our Facebook page and I believe onto YouTube and then other technology that I don't understand. And so this will be available for posterity. And I do thank you all very much for joining us. It's been wonderful to have so many participants. So I think it is time for everybody to go home and have their dinner, which is what I need to do. I'm getting little messages saying, where are you? So I think it's time for us to end. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.